Do our best to get Good evening, everyone. The Durham Public Schools Board of Education work session is now in session. At this time, we wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us this evening. The purpose of this meeting is to inform our parents, staff, and constituents about the work aligned with our mission to embrace, educate, and empower every student to innovate, serve, and learn. The interpreters for tonight are Yvette Perez and Karen Reyes. Thank you for taking the time to join us. At this time, I want to invite everyone for a moment of silence. Thank you. So now we're going to look at the agenda review and approval.
Madam Chair, I would like to request an amendment to the agenda,
Okay.
specifically consent agenda item 2Q, interactive panel purchase. We want to move that to the August 27th board meeting. As you are aware, the county has earmarked about $5.3 million for the purposes specifically for technology. And we certainly look forward to bringing that back and utilizing those funds for enhancements in classrooms. That will obviously have a positive impact on student outcomes. And as one of my students on the Superintendent Advisory Council said, help me pay attention. And so, as you're aware, we have launched our board committees. And the reason we launched those committees is just provide another transparent way to develop the board agendas. And so that's the reason for the change. So we want to bring that back to the August 27th board meeting.
Is there a second?
That's not a motion.
That's not a motion.
I'll
Just
make the
kidding. No
motion.
second is needed.
Oh, I can make motions now?
Just kidding. Melissa, Ms. Rogers.
So hearing that, I'd like to make a motion that we move amend the agenda to do the following. Move the contract services that Dr. Lewis, the purchases, technology purchases to the August 27th board meeting. And that we move the resolution for reaffirming Durham Public Schools' commitment to sustainability to agenda item 5A as a Board of Education item instead of an operations item. Since I worked on that.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Rogers. It's been seconded by Ms. Burr. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor, please use the sound and say aye.
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 If there are any opposed, please say aye. It passes unanimously.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Rogers. It's been seconded by Ms. Burr. Can you please use the sound of aye if it's all in favor?
Aye.
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 It passes unanimously. Okay, now we're moving on to the board work session minutes.
Move approval of the minutes from the work session. June 9th, 2026.
Second.
Any discussion? It's been moved by Ms. Rogers. It's been seconded by Ms. Harold Goff. Any discussions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously. Now, we are going to open up for general public comment. So before that, I want to just read a quick statement, a quick review of the rules. First, please state your name. If speaking for organization, please state your name and the name of the organization. Second, speakers are asked to present their comments in a specified time. of 2 minutes. When the yellow light comes on, you have 30 seconds left to start winding up your remarks. When the red light comes on, it will beep, which indicates your time is up. Complaints about named staff, students, or parents should not be voiced in open session. However, we are very interested in hearing your concerns with regard to public education, safety of students, or to the operation of the school system. Finally, the board members will listen carefully and consider the comments, but we do not engage in a discussion with speakers. Our first speaker is Rob Fields.
Madam Chair, can I have a point of privilege?
Yes.
Is there a reason we're limiting the comments to 2 minutes instead of 3?
No,
How many people are?
we have 2 people.
Policy allows us for 30 minutes. And so when you look at the policy, if there are more than 10 speakers, that's when you would adjust. So I would ask that we give 3 minutes.
It's so moved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. That's what I prepared for. My name is Rob Fields. I'm a DPS grandparent. I've got some slides that are being handed around so that there's some visuals. I've tried to put them on a board so that maybe people will be able to read these, but the topic is the budget and the living wage and how much money did we actually get from the county. What was the net county appropriation that's available to this board for use on the schools that this board governs? The DPS staff budget update reported that that number was $13,549,989. If you go to the actual budget resolutions for the county, though, and you compare last year's resolution to this year's resolution, and you look at how they appropriated the money in their budget resolution, you find that the net local funds increase to DPS, the money you have control over, was $375,000. $13,448,023 is going to charter schools. So of the increased taxes that are being levied as a result of the budget requests from this board, the vast majority of that money is going to charter schools. And I think it's important for people to recognize that and for people to understand that this board got essentially no extra money from the county to do your work for this coming year. So you essentially are stuck with last year's budget plus a little bit. Now, the impact that that has on the classified staff and the living wage issue is the special meeting in July, you authorized salary schedules that reportedly will cost $7.5 million to fund. So where'd that $7.5 million come from? Well, I can't tell you exactly where that money came from, but what I do know is you were not asked to appropriate any additional money to pay for those salary schedules. So the finance department has to have determined that the funds are already appropriated, and the funds that are already appropriated were appropriated on June 25th in an interim resolution, an interim budget that just continued the last budget.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rob Fields. Up next, we have Matthias Matthew.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matthias Matthew. I am a senior at Northern High School. And first, I would like to thank you all for considering this new resolution on climate action. This resolution is essential as it not only reaffirms our commitments to sustainability, but also addresses environmental education, climate resilience, and important aspects of sustainability not mentioned in the original 2021 resolution for renewable energy. I hope you will all vote in favor of it when the time comes. This resolution is an important step but it is just that, one step in the larger journey towards sustainability in Durham Public Schools. And my concern is that, like with the 2021 resolution, progress on this journey will be slow. After all, it took us 4 years to get the plan to make the climate action plan on which our renewable energy goals are meant to be built on. And we're still not sure if we're on track with that first plan. Supporting this resolution needs to go beyond voting in favor of this resolution, but also ensuring both climate resolutions are implemented with effort and urgency. There's always more we can do for sustainability, but the targets set out in these resolutions are smart. They are specific, measurable, relevant, timely, and most important, they are achievable. But they are only achievable if we put in the work to make them happen. That means giving our staff the right resources and holding them accountable to get the job done. We appreciate good intentions, but what we need is action, a climate action plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthias. And thank you for everyone that has spoken and have shared your concerns. Up next, we're going to move into the consent items.
Move approval of the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
It has been moved by Ms. Rogers. It has been seconded by Ms. Joy Harrell Goff. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It passes unanimously. Up next, we're going to be looking at we moved the resolution to Board of Education, so we're looking at the Student U MOU. I'll pass it to Dr. King.
Thank you. And this will be extremely brief. Board members, we wanted to share this with you this evening. By way of admission, this was intended to be an information-only item. Somehow we placed it on an information as an actual item. Do want to just share that the reason we wanted to bring this and the significance of it is this is the first MOU that reflects our shift from the Durham Public Schools Foundation to Student U as our primary partner as it relates to our work with community schools. The MOU itself is relatively unchanged with the exception of one shift to the reimbursement rate for transportation. Other than that, the MOU in and of itself is almost identical to what it has always been, but did want to take a moment to highlight the fact that this is our first MOU with Student U.
Any discussion?
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Rogers.
And it it speaks to the expansion of community schools as well.
Yes, ma'am, it does speak to expansion of
I
community.
think that's
schools
an
to
important piece to
additional
uplift
schools.
because the purpose, right, of starting with community schools with 3 was to pilot. And it is demonstrating some success for our students and improving student outcomes. And so I look forward to seeing what's happening at Brogdon and Carrington. Yep. And seeing how that goes, because it's been successful in other parts of the country and can definitely be of support to our students.
Thank you for sharing that, Ms. Rogers. Any other discussion? Mr. Kaysen.
Yeah, I just want to point out how happy I am, especially to the expansion. When the president at the time of NEA visited Durham, she came to see the community schools and went to look. We actually met at Lakewood, and she was like, "These are all elementary. Are we going to do any kind of longitudinal things?" And so to see the middle schools added this year just brings my heart a lot of pleasure.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Kaysen. Anyone else for discussion? Okay, thank you, Dr. King. Thank you for that update. Moving right along, we're gonna.
Sorry, it still
Yes.
needs to be approved.
Oh,
And I
it-
thought Mr. Kason was gonna make the motion.
Does it need to be approved? Or I thought it was just information?
It's not down as action, it's just information.
Well, it really is just information. It doesn't require
Okay,
approval, just carry the
perfect.
superintendent's
Thank
signature.
you.
Thank you for that correction. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into Board of Education, the proposed governance planning retreat. And I will pass that to Ms. Harogoff as the presenter for that.
Oh, but the resolution was at the top.
With the resolution at the top, I'm just kidding. We are not jumping to that. We will start with the resolution. So I'll pass it to Ms. Rogers.
Thank you all. I think there's some slides or something that goes with this, if y'all wanna do that. I want to express gratitude to uh, all the students, Sunrise, um, Coalition for Sustainable Schools, who have come out and advocated for both the climate action plan and for us to pass this resolution. That is work that absolutely does need to be done. I want to also express my gratitude to Mr. Lynch and Ms. Mitchell, who on numerous occasions met with these students and had conversations and put together a first draft of the resolution that actually demonstrated what tangible action DPS administration can take. That meant a lot. And I could not have come up with this draft without you all. I hope that we can continue to work in collaboration, Board of Education, administration, students, to move this initiative forward, as well as other student-led initiatives. I also have to acknowledge my previous colleagues who have brought these resolutions previously, and that the work is being built upon based on the resources that DPS has. I thank Ms. Valladares, Ms. Byer for their service and their attention to these issues over the years. If we can go to the next slide. Yep. So we talk about the purpose to reaffirm our commitment, as this is a continual process and things will change over time. We've just got to continue to build on what has been. I think it's also important for us to acknowledge the constraints with which we are serving. Because making a plan without the funding, without the resources could be perceived as irresponsible. And we also have to understand the federal government upon which we're under that is not helping us by providing resources either for education nor for climate action. Next slide, please. There's specific administration actions, and this slide speaks to those actions that Mr. Lynch and Ms. Mitchell committed to in their resolution. And I brought it a little higher level to give some leeway to administration based on what funding looks like in the future. There was a conversation about PLCs mentioned. The board doesn't typically get a report about what's happening at PLCs. And so if we ask for that in the resolution, we would have to be very specific about what report outs we want in PLCs. And we need administration to be able to decide where that professional development happens and not limit it to a specific type of meeting. Next slide. This also always calls for periodic reports to the board so we can continue to monitor progress. And it leverages our partnership and advocacy, right? Doesn't make all the work fall to just the superintendent and administration. We have responsibility to advocate to our county commissioners, our legislature, as a board to get some funding for this and make sure it can move forward. Next slide, please. It also speaks to the potential use of future climate funding, should any become available. What would come to the board first as priorities for that funding? And then the board at that time would still regain autonomy and ability to make the decision about how it's allocated. Next slide, please. Okay, it just speaks to why the board should approve. I'm not asking us to read the resolution tonight. Our policy asks that we don't take action except to move items to the board meeting during a work session. So I'm asking for us to have a conversation, discussion about why we should approve and make sure that we're all comfortable with the actions required by the resolution for administration and can ask some questions, which is why Mr. Barnes and Ms. Mitchell, Mr. Lynch are here to answer our questions, because I can't answer what it is that they can and cannot do. So I want us to move this to the board meeting for action. Next slide. I think it's important for us to also understand that we aren't making governance decisions by resolution. We're not making decisions on capital expenditures. We are asking administration to still teach the state standards. This would be in addition to or alongside, but not to modify what we're doing, not to overcome or not do what the state requires us to do. It doesn't mandate that any particular project or any specific thing is going to happen going forward without board consideration. So anything that happens, administration will still need to bring to us, and it's based on our resources and what priorities are necessary. As long as we're seeing student growth, as long as we're seeing enrollment continue to improve, and there are resources, the board has the autonomy to make those decisions. Next slide, please. Yep, I just spoke to this, asking to move it to I guess it's the 27th board meeting and not the 26th. I apologize. That's it. Next slide. I think that's everything. Yep. I can't answer questions specifically except about the language. So if you have specific questions about what administration is going to do or can do, will do with this is the time to ask those questions. The one question that I do have for the board, and that I hope we will consider, is including this as part of our legislative priorities. It came up last year, will come up this year, and right now NCSBA has sent out a form asking us to inform their legislative priorities. I'd like to ask each board member to include that as part of their survey as well.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. I'll now open up for discussion. Ms. Burr.
Thank you so much for bringing this. I think it is wonderful. I'm so glad that we're building on sort of the legacy of what our young people have been doing and our teachers and community, and how much this is needed now as well. Just a few questions which you may or may not be able to answer. Is it possible to define the scopes? Are the scopes already defined that are being referred to in the climate action plan? That's one question. And can I go ahead and do the other two? It's not 10, it's just 3 total. So one, are the scopes defined somewhere? And then there's periodic report backs to the board, and was just wondering, do we have a cadence for that? That should be listed in the resolution. And then I guess 2 other questions. I believe a task force already exists, and was wondering if young people from DPS are a part of the task force, and if it's set at times where they're able to participate. And then I don't know if this resolution would speak to this, but, and I guess that's just a question. When there's money saved from sustainability projects, is that money earmarked for anything in particular? Would we be able to use that money for education, like for educators' pay? So that's just my last question. Sorry if that was too many.
Try to address each of them if I can recall number 4 by the time I get there. So regarding question number 1 about the scoping, scope 1, 2, and 3, those are referencing some industry standards. So scope 1 is related to direct emissions and our ability to go out and physically assess our sites and assess the health of our sites and any emitting emissions that are coming from HVAC equipment and any number of other types of systems that are in our buildings. The second, scope 2, is related to indirect emissions. So this is specifically referencing our energy usage. So just so you're aware, we do actively track our water, electric, and gas. As a district, we've been doing that for 10 years, and we have an energy management dashboard. So this is an active way for us to track indirect emissions and to track if a system is failing. So for instance, if all of a sudden a school site, their water usage spikes, we see that in their monthly report, and we know to have that conversation with maintenance to find out what's going on at the school. So we're actively looking at those indirect emissions on a regular basis. And then item number 3 is in the scoping is life cycle costing and analysis. So as equipment ages out, in many instances, the efficiency, the energy usage, as well as emissions are affected by that. So we do actively track the age of our equipment. Whether we're able to actually refresh that equipment in a timely way is another question, but we do track that. So those are the 3 scoping items that are referenced. So that was one question. You also had a question about,
Can I chime in between?
oh, sure.
So the scope was defined in their draft. It's very wordy. And when the scope of those standards is modified by federal government or anybody else, I want them to still continue to do that monitoring, whatever that scope is defined at the time. So a year from now, if the scope has changed, what they're monitoring needs to change. And so I was afraid that if we go too deep, that it doesn't allow them to move with that.
Thank you. As relates to the task force question, we have been actively working through our climate action plan early development. That has included all of our district-wide interviews with district staff, really better understanding where our successes and failures are and where we can see areas of achievable improvements and things that are actually realizable in the first 5 years of the plan. So we've been engaged in those conversations. The phase 2 is the task force piece we have been holding until school starts because we have a number of folks that are impacted by the summer schedule and the school schedule. That task force has, I believe, 16 to 18 individuals on it. It does have students on it. However, currently, I believe the student participation that we have are students from Duke University who are part of a grant that are going to be assisting with the implementation and writing of the climate action plan. But there is also certainly room for students to sit in and listen and participate and take part in that as well. So that is actively underway, and you will continue to see us come back later in the year with updates on that and areas for you to contribute and comment on. Other questions that I missed?
The periodic.
Oh, periodic reporting. Yes, so that will be, Mr. Barnes will be regularly checking in with you and with us, and we'll be providing schedule updates for you, whether those are quarterly or semi-annually. I don't know at this moment, but we certainly look to him for guidance as we continue to bring those updates and further information to you.
So that wasn't also included in the original
The original.
resolution. And I took that out because there is a mechanism for 2 board members to add anything to the agenda that we would like. There's also the list of topics that we get from the administration that get modified, and now they know that they're supposed to put that in there. And we can come to a board meeting and say, hey, y'all need to bring us an update in 2 weeks or in 3 weeks, anytime. So I did take it out of the resolution because it allows the board more autonomy, because I don't want us to say, oh, we'll get an update every 6 months and then something happens in the world and we need an update and we're limited to that.
And then the last one was a question around fund money. If there is money saved, is that tracked and can that be used for anything or?
So it's not something that we're actively doing now. We have such an embedded approach to how we bring sustainable items on, like just to give you an example, we're doing boiler projects that have increased efficiency, or we're adding controls for our HVAC systems. We're not receiving active rebates for those, so we don't have a way to kind of bring money back. It will produce ultimate savings. So that's maybe a more nuanced item that we would have to think about over time. But some of the rebate programs and some of the grant incentives that have existed in the past aren't currently available to us, but we do actively pursue them. So as those types of items come on board, those are areas where we will certainly realize savings that could be reconstituted into other projects.
Yeah, and I think also like if we look now, this is how much we're spending on energy, and after we make these changes, this is how much we're spending now, and ideally it would be lower. So I just want to thank you all for all that, and I do just want to encourage that we include students from DPS in the task force as well, but everything is great that I've heard tonight. Just appreciate my colleague, Ms. Rogers, and you all for your work as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burr. Anyone else have any questions? Oh, Mr. Kaysen.
Also want to thank Ms. Rogers and all those on staff who put some time into this. Speaking of time, 10 years ago, when I was first on the board, my very first community event was at Southern High School, and I was brought into this discussion by a statewide climate change group that was just trying to say, can we at least put solar panels on roofs? We're changing roofs, fixing roofs, and so forth. So when I went to the administration just asked what's going on, of course, at that time, 10 years ago, they were saying, we want to start with what we know we can control and just change out lights, put efficient lights in the buildings. And now when I walk in the building, the lights are there. And so I'm talking about this 10 years ago thing because I'm looking at the reaffirmation in 2021, talking about targets for 2035 and targets for 2050. Are we doing anything to backwards map at all to see what it would take to get to meet those targets and those long off dates at all? Is that even makes sense to even backwards map? Is that something that you're doing anyway, or have we thought about it? Have we thought about that?
Maybe I'm confused by your question, but are you referring to solar and LED lighting, or are you referring to meeting the actual numbers that were previously put forward by the board?
The actual numbers that were put forward
Yeah,
in
so
2021.
we are actively tracking it. Those numbers, I think, were originally put forward without maybe a fully developed plan. And so we've been working to develop how we're going to actually realize the goals. And it's very much on the fore of our minds. And we have a number of, actionable items, and we track every year where we're at. I am unsure at this moment and probably couldn't commit to you that we'll hit the goal, but we're certainly actively taking every step to hit it. So yeah. And just as relates to your comments related to solar and LED, we have been working actively as a district on those items. So I believe we've completed 22 LED projects. Currently, we're just waiting for additional funding for those. We also did a full solar analysis, and we've identified 19 to 21 schools that are very good candidates for solar. We've also priced those and we've included those in our capital improvement plan. So as projects are updated and as we modernize, those solar projects will be included in there. They've already been budgeted for and planned for. We do have a relatively new school, Lions Farm, that did receive solar on the roof. So we're certainly making steps towards that as well. So.
The 2021 resolution and 2022 bond talked about Southern School of Sustainable Energy. There was an assessment done of Southern School of Sustainable Energy. Can y'all speak to that? No.
When you say assessment.
Assessment of the roof and the readiness of the roof there.
Oh, to receive?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so placing solar and assessing a roof for solar are different things. It requires a structural assessment to make sure that we have anchorage. It also affects the roofing membrane. So whenever we look at anchoring solar panels, we're going to be penetrating the roof, which is a big item relative to regular maintenance. So for Southern specifically, and for the other schools, we have prioritized those currently as the life cycle for the roofing is completed on those. So we would hate to penetrate a roof that is 10 years old or 5 years old. I believe at the time that that was written, that was a relatively new roof. We now have Southern in great need of a new roof. And so the timing would be great in the next few years to make something like that happen for that school. But that's a big factor in doing those improvements. So that would have been a good reason why we would have waited.
That's exactly why we waited. I just wanted to make sure that that was put into this conversation.
Ms. Benkatef?
Yeah, sorry, this is just kind of a probably silly clarifying question, but is that because with new builds, the roof itself is being built to be solar ready when the panels are available or when the budget is available to install those versus a roof that was built, 30 years ago was not designed. When that penetration occurs, it makes it vulnerable to the elements?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on a new construction, there are two things that happen if we're going to make a facility solar ready. The first is there's a lot of infrastructure that's required that has to get to the roof. And so if we're making a building solar ready, then we would be providing all of those mechanical closets and spaces and wiring that gets us to the roof. And so it's ready to just kind of plug and play when it arrives. And then the second piece is the structural integrity of the roof. So as we move forward with construction projects, we want to make sure that our structural engineers are very aware of the fact that we intend to place solar on a roof, whether it's immediate or long-term, so that they're properly sizing and preparing for that because there is weight associated with it. So those are kind of the two pieces that we would think about on a new build or any project. So yes.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Any other board member for discussion? So we're still waiting on a motion to move this to the, or we can seek consensus. So is there a consensus to move this to the board meeting for August 27th? Everyone, yeah, we're good. Okay. Okay, so everyone is in consensus. So this resolution will be moved to the board meeting for August 27th. Moving on to our next item. So we're talking about the proposed governance planning retreat.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
If we do have edits for it, is there still opportunity for that?
Yes.
Okay.
Ms. Rogers?
Yeah, so we would need to develop a consensus around what those edits are. We're all comfortable with those edits, yes. Thank you, Mr. Lynch, Ms. Mitchell.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I guess, do we want to have that conversation about consensus on having edits as well? Okay. Okay, Ms. Burr?
Well, like examples of edits I would want is, I would want to know the list of the 21 schools that are ready. I do think that they can monitor energy savings because there is that dashboard, the money savings is available via that dashboard that the energy monitors did. And I would want us to, you know, prioritize having students involved in that task force, DPS students involved in that task force, maybe changing the time where they can participate.
Ms. Rogers and then Mr. Kaysen.
I was gonna say, there are a couple things we can do with that. I don't know, we don't speak to those things in the resolution. I think we just need to agree that we have consensus and are providing that direction to administration about students being on the task force, DPS students, and ask for a report on what those 22 schools are, and ask on a report on that savings, and determine how often you want it.
Ms. Burr?
Love it. Sounds great. Thank you.
Mr.
Okay,
Kaysen?
wait, how often do you?
Wait, how often do you want it?
I think quarterly.
Quarterly updates? Okay. Mr. Kaysen, do you want to add anything?
I was just gonna reflect that, resolutions tend to be very high level, and I think they work best that way because of the kind of changes that Ms. Rogers talked about earlier. So I'm comfortable not having those details in the resolution itself, because we have the opportunities and authority to ask for those things as we move forward. So I'll be comfortable not putting those in the resolution for those reasons.
Ms. Harold Goff?
I just wanted to also add that all of those things are important to me as well. I'm so excited about the new committees that have formed, and so this is something that I would see, those could go to facilities committee and give the board an opportunity to even think of other questions that are related to things that how the resolution would play out in the actual plan. So I just wanted to clarify that. And also just to say that I'm really, really excited about where we are with this. And thank you so much for redirecting this attention, Ms. Rogers, back to this resolution and getting it moving forward. We've been excited to have something in front of us that we can approve and take action on.
Thank you, Ms. Harold Goff. So it seems as though, I'm gonna just, Ms. Rogers, do you want to add something? Okay, so we have a consensus on the resolution with having updates happening in committees, because this is being living in the legislative committee already. Legislative,
The ask.
The ask
to
is in
the
the-
ask for the funding.
yes,
is
is in
living in legislative
legislative,
committee.
and then updates can also happen in facilities as well.
The updates wouldn't go to legislative committee.
Yes. Okay, so updates would just be facilities committee. Okay, so I'm gonna try to make sure recommendations. Okay, so I'm gonna just make sure all clear. So this resolution has consensus for it to be moved to the board meeting for August 27th, with this living in legislative having updates or getting recommendation for this to have updates regularly in the facilities committee. And we're good. Okay, everyone consensus on this? Yes-ish. Okay, that's good. We're good with that. Ms. Rogers.
My request is the list of the 22 schools that have been at the assessment be sent out in superintendent's update as soon as possible. Not quarterly, but as soon as possible. Because I assume y'all aren't continually reassessing the roofs for solar function. Okay.
Dr. King, are you comfortable with that request, or Dr. Lewis?
Ken Barnes.
It would be Mr.
No,
Barnes?
I'm trying to understand, who's bringing this back on the 27th?
It's just the resolution that's coming back to be
Just
read
the
and
resolution.
celebrated.
We read. Okay, and so all of the discussion around the edits, is someone getting those edits to you?
We're not adding and adding this to the resolution. Right?
So the
We're-
information around quarterly, that's gonna come back on the 27th as well, right?
No, we're asking
Expectation.
y'all to take that as a next steps of quarterly requests
We can take it
around
back for
the,
consideration, yeah.
for consider.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll bring it
We-
back. We
yeah.
will bring it
I
back.
just wanna
then.
make
We
sure
will
we're
bring
able
it
to
back.
operationalize that, yeah,
Yeah, we'll bring it back with the resolution.
okay. Yeah, that'll be helpful. Approve everything on that night, so we'll be clear on our expectations, with the resolution.
But ideally, we'll have the list of schools that are prioritized for solar panels on the list
Mm-hmm,
in the superintendent update that comes ahead of the meeting on the 27th.
yes.
So sometime between now and then.
Okay, we'll capture that in our, notes for this.
Is that right? Okay.
I just want to be clear on the ask for us.
And then I'll make sure we're clear on everything else
Okay.
by the time we get to the next board meeting.
Thank you for that clarification, Ms. Rogers. And with that, we're going to move on to the next item, and the proposed governance planning retreat. Indeed, I'm going to pass this over to Ms. Harold Goff and Mr. Kaysen as the leads on this.
All right, thank you so much. Board members, what is shared in the in the agenda is proposed outcomes and a draft agenda for a governance planning retreat. I'm offering this as a starting point for our collective thinking about how we want to govern together this year and how we'll hold ourselves accountable for building and sustaining the excellent governance practices that we all we all seek. The proposed outcome reflects some possibilities of how we could use this dedicated time together. They're only suggestions. We could use this time to establish and to revisit our board norms, strengthening our partnership with our superintendent. We can develop a community vision. We could reach for student outcome priorities as a board, clarify governance practices. We could share individual and collective leadership commitments for the year. These are all suggestions of how we could use this time, but I don't want the agenda to drive the outcomes. What I really want is for the outcomes that we believe are important to drive the agenda and determine where we spend our time. So for discussion today, I'd love to hear from as many of you as I can. From now and until it's time for the retreat, what do we need to leave this retreat having accomplished? And what would be meaningful and productive use of our time? So your feedback will help us shape the final agenda, and then we can make sure we create the appropriate space for the work we collectively believe to be most important for that time. That's the first thing. I'll come back and explain that again in a moment. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was that September 15th is currently being held on our calendar for a retreat, but not all board members can make September the 15th. So I'd like to propose that we ask Ms. Smith to send us another doodle poll this coming week to see if we can entertain additional options through the end of September with the goal of identifying the earliest date when all board members might be able to attend the retreat. It was important to me just by the nature of what this is. This is the board just really giving ourselves the opportunity to continue to work on excellent governance and to identify how we're going to work collectively. So I would love to have already have had this retreat before we had gotten into the school year. But you know, it is what it is. And if we're nothing if not flexible and can move like water. So the ask is how soon is there, I would like to entertain to see if there is an opportunity as soon as possible for us to have a governance retreat. And I can stop there. So I'm interested to know if you already have some ideas for, what outcomes would be important to you for use of that time. And also this conversation doesn't have to start and end here. We can continue to have those conversations and so that it is reflected in the agenda that we ultimately have at the retreat. So I will step back.
Thank you, Ms. Harold Goff, for that invitation. Now we'll open up to the board. Anyone have questions? Mr. Tab?
Thank you very much. With the retreat, are we thinking of that we're going to do the retreat ourselves and do and place the agenda, or are we getting a facilitator, someone that's going to come in and facilitate what we need? I mean, we've been on this board, some of us, so we've done the retreats and we've had both, I guess, both ways, but some work better than others, I think, but this is new. So are you considering having a facilitator?
I was thinking that we could, for the most part, since we would be choosing our outcomes for how we would work collectively as a governance team, that we would facilitate ourselves, decide how we would do that, and invite administration to come and support the areas where we would definitely need partnership. So for instance, we definitely, I would hope we would invite our superintendent to come for a part of that retreat for things that we would come up with, but it really is going to be determined on what we define those outcomes to be. The outcomes that I'm suggesting, I do feel strongly that we could self-facilitate ourselves through with some invitations from administration.
I would just recommend that we come up with as a board what we want to see in the retreat, but because it's a lot of new board members, I think that would work better if we had a facilitator starting out, because we all, it's a lot of new people. So someone that was going to guide us through the topics that we are suggesting that we want to talk through, as opposed to us kind of as new people just kind of facilitating ourselves. That's all. That's just my thoughts.
I'm open to that. I'm open to whatever the board decides we need in order to have the retreat.
Ms. Rogers?
I appreciate that conversation. I appreciate you sharing your position about us self-facilitating. Given the newness of so many board members, I'm wondering, and thinking back to the last 6 years, I don't know that we've had a board retreat that's been self-facilitated. And I'm very appreciative of Dr. Lewis's leadership and advocacy in getting us to be a part of Council Great City Schools that works with AJ Crable to do the student outcomes-focused governance. I'm looking at the agenda from July 21st, 2026 for Wake County, and they had a board retreat, and it was facilitated by both NCSBA and Council Great City Schools, and Wake County joined council this year and are working towards adopting some governance changes. And so when we ask administration to compare our students to top districts in the state and compare the pay to top districts in the state, are we doing the same kind of work as the boards in the top districts in the state? And so if we want to get there, we got to start from the top. And the model generally is that it's a facilitated retreat. So I'd be in favor of a facilitated retreat, which also is going to change the timeline, right? Because you now are bringing in another person to whose schedule we have to adjust for. We have to identify the resource for that. But I think it's worth having a facilitator. Our students deserve us to be functioning at our best, and people who have been at this for many, many years are best poised to help us through that.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Ms. Harold-Goff?
Everything that you said, and you and Mr. Tab, I am hearing, and I get it, I understand. I think I am thinking about this as a different opportunity. That sounds like two different things to me. This is a board opportunity for the board to come together and to have conversations about how we are working together. Things that it's almost like a follow-up from what the orientation led. We do have new board members, where they got training for certain things, and now it's about alignment of the work moving forward. So I think that we might not have the same lens for what kind of work is being done at this retreat. And so that's why it's important to me that we have a conversation about outcomes. And if the outcomes are such that it's going in a different direction, and we need, which would require that kind of facilitation, and that we decide we don't need this kind of retreat where we align ourselves as a working body, then I will have to hear that. But what I'm really trying to get at, what I'm trying to articulate, is this is an opportunity at the beginning of the year for us to just find some alignments and get on the same pages around things like our communication, the tools and resources that we already have, our SOPs, having access to things, having an opportunity to talk through some things at the beginning of the work year, before things evolve more, and then we're having to backtrack. So it is newish. It's a newish idea that gives us some autonomy to have conversations like that without facilitation, and for us to direct the conversations. I'm not opposed to the retreat that you and Mr. Tab are suggesting. I think we should do that also, but this is me speaking as a board chair of something, a vision that I have for us being able to align how we approach our governance strategies for the year. Of course, in partnership with our superintendent. And I'm interested to hear from other board members about outcomes in that direction. If we were to have a retreat like that, can we start with what those outcomes would look like? What would be a good use of the time for that? Or, do we even agree that that would be a good use of time to have those conversations and to set some direction in that way? Okay, so I will step back.
Thank you, Ms. Choi. Mr. Kaysen.
So here's my time. I went down memory lane. Now it's my time to play rookie card. Even the trainings that we did in CSBA about a month ago as newly elected members, which was great. It did not necessarily touch how we operate as a board. This feels new. There are times where I'm just like trying to figure out next steps. And so if I agree with Chair Harrigoff, it does feel like we're talking about two different things. So if we're talking about this first retreat being a orientation plus in how we work together, because we have new opportunities with the committees, there's a lot of new things going on that were not the case in my previous term. I would love the opportunity for us to do some real collective discussions about how we operate, how we choose to operate moving forward this year. So I can see us doing a one that is facilitated by us about how we work, and moving forward, moving down the line, having another one about some of these larger aspects of the work that can be facilitated by the experts that are working with the top districts. But I do feel a need, because I do feel a need for a post orientation governance discussion, really deep discussion that we don't want to have to do here necessarily.
Thank you, Mr. Kaysen. Ms. Betkateef.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And I really agree with Mr. Kaysen. I see it as kind of a both and scenario in which we could have this retreat that would sort of be the way I see it is this is a little bit more like operational, functional, like figuring out the guardrails of how we're going to work as a board. And then if we were to have another retreat with a facilitator, it would be a little bit more, you know, visionary, and sort of a higher zoomed out level. But I do think we need to get some like black and white parameters of how we're going to move as a body, what our expectations are, for ourselves and for administration. I just want us all to be playing the same game on the same field and all understand the rules. So that's sort of how I see what this retreat would be for us.
Thank you, Ms. Bent-Kateif. Any other discussion? Mr. Tab?
Thank you very much. Thank you, my colleagues, for your commentary on how you think what we should be doing. And I agree, we can try different things. I like structure. And as the newness of this, I just want us to make sure that we have something tangible that is being structured by somebody so that we can move in the best direction for this next retreat, that we can do what we're saying now. So it's kind of like, I'm just looking at it from the flip side, doing the facilitator first, and then then turn us loose, so that there is some structure, because I don't know how, what the new board members and what direction they may come and some of the things they will want to talk about. But I think talking about it with a facilitator makes it run smoother. Because I think I've been in enough retreats now that, well, I'll leave that alone. All right, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Tab. I'll go to Ms. Rogers and then Ms. Harogoff.
I'm comfortable with both, and I do agree with Mr. Tab on that, in that if we have a facilitated conversation, we are setting up some ground rules on how we engage with each other that a facilitator can lead us through. I do want to respond to Ms. Kateif's thoughts about a need to get black and white rules and parameters around things. Our black and white rules truly are our policies. And so anything that we establish as a norm, establish as a rule at such a retreat would need to be aligned with our policy. Further than that, state statute says what we can and cannot do, for real. But if we're going to establish rules, what we also need to be thinking about, what are the ramifications when someone violates that rules? Who is the determiner of who does those rules, and or what happens if somebody violates that rule, or identifying whether that person has violated a rule. And I think a facilitator could help us get there. I'm open to whatever, and I think either way, but both and I think we should. I don't think there's anything wrong with the agenda that's proposed, and that we should get another doodle poll.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Ms. Harogoff.
Thank you for those comments. The agenda that is proposed, I'm hoping will still continue to morph. I really would like to get more clarity and feel like everyone is solid on the outcomes and what's expected at the board retreat, so that when we develop the agenda off of that will be very clear and we won't be guessing. Like, we can even prepare ahead of time. Like, I'm hoping we'll be able to see that agenda prior to, all of us will have agreed on the outcomes, and then also the timeline of when it is. Like, I know people have lifted up it not starting, like, if we don't need all the time, depending on the outcomes, we might not need, the time that's proposed on the proposed agenda. It could be a shorter time. We might be starting later or finishing sooner. So I don't want us to think about this proposal as the finished product, or the finished agenda, but would take some accountability to make sure that all board members see a finished agenda and have time to consider the conversations before we go into that kind of retreat. So, so that it feels like we're walking into the space, not willy-nilly, having random conversation, but that we're really going into it with thoughtful outcomes in mind. And I look forward to having conversations with all of you more about those outcomes and making sure that everybody feels good coming into the space, coming into a safer space for those kinds of conversations in a publicly noticed meeting.
Who are we tasking to complete the agenda?
I
Like-
can continue to propose and work on it and make
And
sure.
you'll bring it back to the next board meeting or work session until we're ready?
Yes.
Okay.
So is there an action on this proposed governance planning? So are we taking any action tonight on bringing it or we just having discussion?
I was just bringing it for discussion and to make sure that people had information to bounce off of.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Burr and then Ms. Benkatef.
I just want to say thank you for putting this together, and you asked a lot of us about it beforehand too, and I really appreciate that. Like you already, you were striving to get our feedback ahead of time. I want to appreciate the idea of an outside facilitator because you can't really participate when you're facilitating. But at the same time, I do want to lift up that we have some long-term educators in the room who are probably amazing facilitators, and also some of us who come from community who are also able to facilitate and know how to set containers and ground rules for things. So I love the idea of thinking about the experts in the room to supporting this project. And then you asked also about like the schedule. I know I would really benefit from more on governance operating practices because we do have a lot to learn. And I also appreciate Ms. Rogers kind of making sure that things go back to, well, also just like the strategic plan is very important for the student outcomes, and then policy and the state statutes are very important. And then there was something about lifting up accountability, like during the day accountability in the retreat. And I do think we have the tools to hold ourselves accountable to the norms that we put forth. So just wanted to share a little bit. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Burr. Any other discussion, Ms. Benkatef?
No, I just, it is marked for action on the précis, so I just want to make sure that that's cool, that we're not doing any action. Okay, great.
No, I did not intend for it to be marked for action.
So we're just having discussion. Are we all hearts and mind and clear on next steps? So next steps is Ms. Harold Goff will bring another proposed agenda to the board meeting in August 27th, and we'll keep reviewing it until we have an agreed upon agenda, as well as possibly a facilitator may, yes or no. Ms. Benkatef.
And Miss Smith will send another doodle poll to try and identify a date at which all 7 of us can be present and engage in this.
Thank you. Yes, and so we'll add that in there as well. So we'll try to find another date, and this will come back until we have a agreed upon agenda. Ms. Harold Goff and then Mr. Tabb.
When we're looking for the date, I'm hoping that we could find something before the end of September, because I think these conversations will be more useful the earlier we get them done. But if we can't find something before the end of September, I ask that we seek to find the soonest possible date where we can all attend.
Mr. Tabb.
Thank you. I don't want us to be doing extra work or Ms. Smith to have to do anything so extra. It's always difficult to get all of us at anything, all 7 of us. So I think Ms. Rogers is the one that had probably the schedule challenge. So I suggest that maybe she can get with Ms. Smith and look at a date that works, and then at least put that on there so that it comes to all of us. so that we can at least know that we are trying to get all of us there. Okay?
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Tabb. Ms. Rogers, are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I can do that.
Also, just want to lift up, if there is consideration about a facilitator, I would hate to identify a date that works for Ms. Rogers and works for everyone else, but doesn't work for the facilitator. So that probably needs to be decided in tandem with identifying a date for Ms. Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
That's what I mean. It's hard to get everybody. So, we just can do the best that we can to make it happen. But that's difficult. Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for that.
I'm just gonna clarify one more time what's happening next. So Ms. Rogers is gonna speak with Ms. Smith about available dates that she might have. Meanwhile, Ms. Harold Goff is gonna be working on a agenda that she'll be bringing back to the board for official approval at some point at a later date. And we are still determining about a facilitator. Are we all in agreement of those items that are currently on the table? Yes, okay.
And I'll
What-
just,
oh,
just add my 2 cents as I am a part of this governance team. Probably have done, oh gosh, probably 15, 20 retreats with school boards. I've never attended a retreat that was not facilitated. And there are some advantages of a retreat being facilitated in terms of, I think, Board Member Burr mentioned it in terms of board members being able to participate and not worry about keeping us on schedule or moving to the next item. And the goal is for us to become a high-functioning governance team. And so thinking about laying that solid foundation, so really being intentional about how we start as a governance team. And it also allows an opportunity for board members not to stick to what's comfortable, for existing board members, what's been comfortable on the board, and for new board members, what you may have been observing, and returning board members, what has been in the past. It just allows that third party to identify opportunities for us to get out of our own way. So that's my 2 cents there.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis. Ms. Harokoff.
That brings this up to me too. One of the things that I was wanting to bring to the retreat also, or was going to offer as an outcome, is for us to understand our board budget, whatever our budget line is. So I'm just lifting that up for the conversation as one of the outcomes, because I'm not opposed to a facilitator. I think I didn't want us to not have it because we couldn't get one. I didn't want us to not have this kind of retreat because we couldn't get a facilitator as soon as we can get a date with the board members. So I hope that we can do both. I hope we can.
Is it possible to identify a facilitator, Ms. Harokoff, and bring that as well to the next meeting?
I'm fine with not having that conversation right now. I'm listening to what everyone has said. I'm just processing all of the information. And we'll prepare to bring, to move this conversation forward in the board meeting.
Thank you. Any other discussion before we move on to our next item? Wonderful. Okay. So now we're going to talk about the Policy Committee and Legislative Steering Committee member appointments. So, do I read these? Okay, so Ms. Harogoff will read the appointments for Legislative and for Policy Committee.
I'm just gonna go ahead and make a motion. I would like to move that the board appoint Millicent Rogers, Nadine Burr, Xavier Kaysen to the Policy Committee, and Millicent Rogers, Gabby Rivero, and Xavier Kaysen to the Legislative Steering Committee for the 2026-27 school year.
I second.
So it has been moved by Ms. Harold Goff. It's been seconded by Ms. Burr. Any discussion? Ms. Rogers and Mr. Tabb.
Yep. Thank you all for putting this together. I'm very appreciative. Look forward to the work that's to come. I wanted to talk about the Legislative Steering Committee appointments. Talk about how previously prior to last year, 3 board members of the board would put together a legislative agenda for the board, bring it to the board for review and conversation. As we were developing the legislative steering committee last year, it was more about community engagement, community input, and community understanding how to better advocate for the needs of DPS and to carry our agenda forward. And so one of the reasons why the proposal came with the limit of 1 to 2 board members is so that, because there's power in being a board member, right? And the intention of the Legislative Steering Committee is for the voices of our community to be heard and the voices of our educators and people who don't necessarily have access to power. As a board member, I know that I can continue to advocate. I can call any of the Durham delegation, some other members of delegation across the state. I can call lots of board members across the state. I can call any county commissioner in Durham, and they'll answer the telephone. So I don't need to have access to that space, but I also feel like we as board members don't need to have a heavy influence in that space, which is why it was only 1 to 2 board members, because 3 of us could get together and put together an agenda. And so I would ask that we commit to allowing the room to be led by the people and allow for only 2 board members to be in that space. And given that I'm making that request, I'm happy to not be that person in that space. And Mr. Kaysen and Ms. Rivera, you all can move the committee forward. Obviously, any board member can show up, can engage in discussion, just would not be a voting member of that committee. Because whatever comes out of that committee still has to come back to the board for approval.
Mr. Tapp, and then Ms. Harold Goff, and then Mr. Kaysen.
Thank you. I just want clarity on this, and maybe Attorney Malone, you may have to help me with this one. In the academics committee, we as the board selected our chair. In facilities, we selected our chair. So I'm just wondering, was the chair supposed to have selected the chair for those committees? What's making the difference between those committees that we selected and now it's being appointed by the chair? I just want to make sure that we're Attorney Malone, I want to hear from.
We discussed it, so I'll let her answer.
So, I found that our board policies and our past practices regarding appointments of committee chairs are not entirely consistent. And so other committees have already met and they've already established their own leadership. And the policy committee policy that, they already, it says that they select their own chair. And so in the interest of allowing committees to determine the leadership consistently, I was going to ask that we just disregard what was mentioned on that précis and allow the legislative, team to select. But however, based on what Ms. Rogers has just said, which I love, and she's correct about what she's done, is she's explained the spirit of what that committee is supposed to be. All committees are not exactly the same. They don't all come together the same. And so that committee might not need a chair. But I didn't have the intention to appoint a chair for legislative committee today. After seeing that, I was going to allow legislative committee to decide how they deal with leadership. If you still want to, Attorney Malone, if you want to add anything to that? I don't.
Not exactly answering the question, but I think that what you're saying is that the policy was not clear on that we could do it, the chair could do it, or we could do it as a body.
So let me try to explain what appears to have happened in your policy. The policy that gives the duties of the chair says shall appoint committee members and chairs. But your board committee policy establishes no committees. So that language is historically tied to your having like established committees for which the chair would then appoint committee members and chairs. Outside of those, then Then what your policy says for ad hoc committees like the legislative committee and the 3 that you did in July, those are technically ad hoc committees. Your policy says that ad hoc committees may be appointed by the chair with the approval of the board, which is what you're doing tonight. And it doesn't say anything about the chair actually appointing the chair. It says these committees will consist of a chair and as many members as the board deems appropriate. So I think that in this kind of a situation, either the board would appoint the chair or as the chair is recommending, allowing the committee to choose its own chair.
And so, thank you for that. And so what I'm saying is, because we have done it a certain way already, changing it in the middle doesn't sit well with me, because that's not how we decided to do it. Now, if we wanted to, if we have another committee that comes up again, in the process of all of this, and we decide, then let us make a decision now that either it's going to be appointed by the chair or it's going to be appointed by the board. I just want consistency. Because because it's going to get, the water's going to get muddy, because sometimes all of a sudden there's going to be a committee and the chair is just going to say, well, I just appointed Mr. Tab to be chair of that, right? But that's not how we have done the others. I just want us to be consistent on what we decide to do. That's not saying that you can't do it, because he just read to me what it could. I'm just saying, I think we need to be consistent in what we're doing. But it doesn't have to be that way. If the board decides we want it to be either or, then the board decides that. But I'm a little leery of the chair making the decisions of the appointments, if that's not what it necessarily calls for. But then in another policy, it does call that it can happen. That's muddying the waters, and I think we need to clean that up for future, because something else may come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tab. Attorney Malone, do you have something you want to respond with?
I was just going to note that one of the things that I mentioned to the chair is that the policy committee may want to take up whether to take many of these committees that you now have established and make them standing committees, and do a revision to the policy to make those committees standing committees. And then, if we need to also tweak the appointment part, we can work on that. But you may want to go ahead and consider making those standing committees. Certainly the 3 that you set up in July are across the state often standing committees. So you would be kind of going to what Dr. Lewis was saying earlier, you'd be a lot more consistent with what other boards are doing.
Thank you, Attorney Malone. I'm going to go Mr. Kaysen. Go.
Mr. Tab, the things that you're talking about and bringing up are correct. It's what we saw after the pre-season was publicly announced. We were like, we've got some policy issues. So everything you just said is what we've been talking about with the attorney. And we want it to be the same. The chair has no intention of appointing chairs to any of these current committees. But down the road, those policies have to be made right, which is why I feel like very clearly that should be something the policy committee is going to have to deal with, so that this doesn't happen again. So I saw the look on your face. I mean, we had the same look. We were like, this has got to get fixed. So we just want to acknowledge your instinct, but that was not the intent, which is why when we had our regular check-in with the attorney, we were like, we need to talk about this and see what can we do in the meeting, which what she was going to do was to just say, waive that piece. Don't worry about that line that says the board will appoint, because it's not consistent. So.
Yes, you can respond.
Thank you, Dr. Casey, for that. And this was in any form or fashion to say what the chair can and cannot do. I just wanted to make sure that, with me, I like to be consistent. What are we going to do? We're going to do it so that it doesn't put you in a situation where you are just as you say, willy-nilly just appointing. Let's have structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tab.
Just tiny
Okay,
clarification.
Ms. Burr.
Question for Dr. Lewis. Did you want the 3 committees from July to be standing committees? Ongoing, like as Mr. Malone said, to change the policy for that? Just
I don't think we need to change the policy to continue with the committees.
I know you asked Dr. Lewis and you didn't ask me my opinion. But he's not a board member.
Well, it was his idea for those 3 committees. That's why.
I recommended it when I was in leadership.
Mm.
So I think it would be ideal.
Mhm.
Right? I think that it would be ideal for it to be in policy and established as being said at the organizational meeting, right? And making it clear what those are and why. I have some concerns about how it has come to fruition, which I expected that the board would have some concerns about how it is currently being executed, and thought that we should try it out and then create a policy that reflects any changes we need. And so we just happen to be the people in the seats right now while we're trying it out. And we have to live with the ramifications of that. In previous history, there were specific work sessions that were for operations, for academics, facilities that happened in the evenings, like this work session, 5:30 to 7 or so. And in my head, that's the kind of committees that we were establishing, because as I ran for school board, it was important to me that this work be accessible to working class. Not accessible, the work of the committees is not accessible to our educators right now during the day. It's not accessible to people who have to go to work every day. It's not accessible to those kinds of parents and things of that nature. And so much of the consent agenda tonight did go through those committees, but it happened during the daytime and was not accessible. And I struggle with that. I struggle with the sustainability of this work as someone who has to continue to go to work. And wanting to show up and follow through on the commitment that I made to the thousands of voters that elected me. And I think that we need to think about that as we're establishing these committees. I think that we need to make sure in our onboarding of new board members that they understand the work of these committees and what that looks like, and so that they're ready at the organizational meeting, and that we can do this every year to set things off. I think that was the intent when we approved the policy committee. We are already 2 weeks behind. Policy committee is expected to meet this month. Policy committee is expected to bring something back to the agenda in August. And the portal is supposed to be open so that the public can submit policy recommendations and changes, but administration is making recommendations on where to put their policies. And the public doesn't have access to us in that way. And so I think that we're a little bit behind the 8 ball already. But I think that we need to get back to making sure that as we make the work of the committees or the board work in committee more bite-sized, and that we're still making it accessible to the public, that we're still having these seats accessible to working class folks, and that we're still putting students first. And it seems like we aren't there right now just because we're behind, and I don't think that's our intent. It just is how we're showing up right now. And so I hope we can work together to figure out how to make those more accessible, maybe a 4:00 meeting, right? I know you're shaking your head. I'm just saying, alternatively, the next election cycle, we could see a turnover and have a bunch of retired white men sitting here like other states do, other counties in the state do, representing Durham Public Schools. Dr. Lewis?
Well, I applaud the board for moving toward committees. I think it makes it more accessible to the public, as opposed to the agenda reviews that were taking place that were not accessible to the public. And I think with our policy committee meetings, we get a lot of feedback from members of the public to attend those. and those are during the day. So I think it's all about continuous improvement, just really thinking about what are the barriers to moving the work forward. But I do believe that with the committees and moving that work forward, it allows before something makes it to the agenda, if a member of the public wants to come and have questions, that now the board reflects and say, okay, maybe we need to bring this back in January and making this up here. But yeah, we're always looking to improve, but I do appreciate the board for taking the step of creating committees that allows anything that the committees are talking about, but definitely things that are coming to the board more transparent.
I saw Ms. Benkatave, Mr. Kason, Ms. Harold-Goff. Thank you, Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, I just wanted to really thank Ms. Rogers for uplifting that component and the need for working people to be able to access these spaces. And something that I had kind of been laser focused on the structure of the committees and how it makes sense to me logistically with the way the work flows, but I completely agree that and I don't know whether alternating meeting times, that seems complicated and difficult. But yeah, having more meetings later in the day so that people who are working can access them is so important. As well as for the people who serve in these seats to be able to access the work and do it. You know, not everyone, like I work a hospitality job, so I don't work 9 to 5, but many people who do work 9 to 5 are not able to take the time to do this work. And that is just something that I really appreciate Ms. Rogers for naming.
Thank you, Ms. Benkatave. Mr. Kason?
I also appreciate those comments and the previous comments that you made earlier about the legislative steering committee and how it really should be community informed. You know, I spent the last 6 years working on community related work with partnerships with schools. And when you were making those comments at the time, I immediately thought, hey, I should step up. You've got you were there when it was created. So I was going to say that I would gladly step away as an appointed member, but I prefer that you stay on. I know you offered to step back, but I do have other duties here too as well. So I know that it felt like an eon ago when we had our organizational meeting, but I know that was the first thing out of my mouth. I wanted to be on this committee and that committee, but I don't have to be on as many committees as is listed. And I would gladly step back so that Ms. Board Member Rivero and you could lead that work. And I'll show up. But I would prefer that you remain on it. That's just my preference. I'll lift that up.
I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Kason. Ms. Harold-Goff?
Thank you. And my comments fall right in line with Mr. Kason's comments. I was going to ask, you know, who would be willing to step back in the spirit of what the legislative committee is designed to do. And so I can amend that motion to only to select Ms. Rogers and Ms. Rivero. If the board accepts that friendly amendment, to do that. Did I do that properly?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay, so that would be a friendly amendment to the agenda for that.
But you need to see if there's a second to the
Oh,
friendly
yes,
amendment.
so would there be a second to that friendly amendment?
I
Second.
second.
Jinx.
It has been, a friendly amendment has been moved by Ms. Harold-Goff, has now been seconded by Mr. Kason. I saw Ms. Burr had something she wanted to say, so I'll open one more time for discussion.
Does the original amendment need to change to get rid of the appointed piece? Appointing a chair, or
There was no
that
appointment.
was not on there?
I didn't have an appointment to, it was never my intention to appoint a chair to any committee this evening.
So with that, I will now ask all in favor of this friendly amendment motion.
Aye.
All except favor say
Aye.
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 Right, it passes unanimously. And we did this for legislative, but did you also say for policy?
I did. I named policy and legislative in the one motion.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, we have a couple more items. You know, we're getting close to time. Okay, so one thing.
Sure. I just do want to follow up on the portal. The portal is open and never closed, so the policy committee portal is open.
Can we get an announcement to go out about that like we did last year?
Yeah, I guess we can. I mean, because we never said it would close, so. we
So
just
it
send a
does, the
reminder.
policy says it closes August 31st. Or the ones that we're considering
Right.
closes August
Yeah.
31st.
Yeah, we can work on that. Thank you.
Thanks. I mean, it was on socials, it went out, sparked email, et cetera. Would love if it went out talking points.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. With that, let's move on to our next item. We're looking at policy revision process for NCSBA policy updates. Is there a presentation or a conversation, Dr. Pittman?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Rivera and members of the board and Dr. Lewis. So this evening, the administration is bringing forward a recommendation that the board waive the requirements found in policy 2231, our policy committee policy, as they apply specifically to the North Carolina School Boards Association policy updates and the recommendations, so that those mandatory updates can be assigned and referred to the appropriate board committee for review and recommendation. So just a little background and rationale. The School Boards Association sends to school districts at least twice a year updates, and those updates include new policies or revisions to our existing policies based on changes in law, agency guidance, and best practice. So our policy 2231 currently provides that all requests for a new policy or amendments to existing policies shall be directed to our policy committee. This year, with the implementation of the new board committee structure, this provides the board a rich opportunity for board members to review and discuss these time-sensitive School Boards Association policy updates with key administration. Given the time sensitivity of some of these new laws and the impact on our policies, and given the board committee structure, this waiver of that clause in the policy will ensure that our Durham Public School Policy Manual and our policies therein are updated and will expedite the time-sensitive nature of those requirements. So rather than, so with this proposed waiver, it would allow the policy committee to disperse the policy committee updates and be referred by our superintendent to the board committee most closely aligned with that subject matter. And it might include the policy committee, a referral to the policy committee. On the précis, there's a sample of what this might look like, building on the summer edition of the updates coming out of the School Boards Association policy update. And in that, you'll see we've listed the 11 policies that the School Boards Association said the boards need to adopt, some of which are went into effect in July per our state law. And you can see where we've best slotted those policies according to the committee structure that we currently have. So at this time, we are asking for the board to consider a revision a waiver of policy 2231 to authorize the superintendent to refer the North Carolina School Boards Association policy updates or recommendations to the appropriate board committee. And this is for action by the board for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pittman. I'm going to open it up for discussion. Ms. Burr.
So if the policies, as a new person, I need more orientation on when the policies go to the committees and they're discussed there. Do they come out with a new draft? And then where does that new policy go? Does it have to then come to a work session, or does it come to the board work session for first read and things like that?
Yes. So the recommendation would be that and you'll look, there's a summary table linked in some of the questions that the board, one of our board members lifted up. But the table will highlight what's recommended, and it will help us understand whether this is a law that's mandated, much of which really has to be adopted and won't require much discussion. But in the event that it does, that policy committee can go deep. But indeed, the process will continue, that the first reading would be sent to the board, full board, on first reading in a work session, ideally, followed up for subsequent second reading at the full board meeting. And so during those work sessions, even additional conversation, input, discussion might occur across the full board, and then take back for consideration if it needs to go back to committee, or whether those revisions can be managed through the administration.
And a second on that one, is that okay?
It's okay, Ms. Burke, yes.
Is this all the time when the North Carolina School Board has changes, or is it just for this summer
So
updates?
we're suggesting that because the School Board Association is on a regular rhythm of sending these updates, that you would authorize the superintendent to manage it through committee as appropriate, and including the policy committee, as I lifted up, may indeed be the committee that works on that policy. But given the nature and the sequencing in the policy committee, 2231, we have monthly meetings, and the processes that have to happen. We have to tier, we have to get approval of that tiering process through the full board. Through this, managing the School Boards Association updates will expedite and ensure our policy manual stays more in compliance with law or regulations.
Thank you, Dr. Pittman, Ms. Rogers, and then Ms. Benkatafe.
Thank you all. I hear you. I understand. I think my ask is for this board and for administration to consider giving this board an opportunity to be attentive of the way the way we can continuously improve the policy committee, and give us that opportunity to do that before getting out ahead of us. And so the policy committee does need to meet this week. The tiering portion isn't a part of the policy. We have to prioritize the policies that we adjust as part of the policy committee. And the board could come in and say, or the policy committee could come in with a recommendation that we're going to prioritize recommendations that have come from NCSBA or have a deadline that we have to meet by general statute. Give us that opportunity to make that choice for ourselves for this year. And so for me, that means I would like the policy committee to have the opportunity to review the NCSBA policies and do the work that we were elected to do as board members in addressing policy and looking and having a conversation with each other to determine if we can prioritize those policies and then start working on, because those are must-haves, right? And then start working on the other policies that are nice-to-haves. And so it doesn't have to necessarily be as complicated of a tiering process as we have used in the past. It could be, we're going to bring NCSBA policies always as a priority, and stuff required by state statute, and then we could list out whatever else comes through from community. Does that make sense?
Dr. Lewis.
I want to give Dr. Pittman an opportunity, and then I'll have some comments.
Absolutely, it does. And part of why we were lifting up this waiver is because the policy committee timeline it says after August 31, when the community input and the staff input is gathered, then the policy committee convenes in September for two purposes. One is to establish your meeting schedule, and then to send to the board at the end of the month the priorities of the policy committee. So the timeline as specified in policy was off. And you play that out, once the policy priorities are voted on by the full board, then the committee will meet in October. And we were playing the timeline, it might be as early as November before some of these summer updates come before the full board. So to your point, Ms. Rogers, I mean, it certainly could be when we convene, when the policy committee convenes in August. I don't know how to manage the policy specifications of prioritization after August 31 without this waiver to get moving forward on the summer updates.
Right.
But I hear you, I hear your feedback on that. Mhm.
So right now, in this moment, the board could waive the policy and direct the policy committee, because the board can direct the policy committee to do anything. The board could direct the policy committee to, at its meeting in August, take up because we're required to meet between August and May,
Correct.
to take up NCSBA policies for consideration. And if the policy committee needs that feedback, needs further input from other board members, from other administrative staff in the other committees, it could then go to those committees in September if it needs to, because those committees have already met this month, right?
The September committees have not.
No, the
Right,
August committees
that's
have
right.
already
That
met.
won't come in August,
But
that's
the
correct.
August policy committee hasn't convened. So the
Correct.
board could direct the policy committee to take up the policy changes from NCSBA that are listed in this chart in August and bring it back at the September work session for first read and approval of the September. Because most of these are things we don't have much of a choice on.
Which is the reason that I didn't want to, if you recall, policy
Okay.
committee meetings last year, there was a lot that we didn't get to, and those agendas were packed. And so this is a way to ease the load, so to speak, of policy committee. And then I would advocate long-term, these ones that are coming from NCSBA that has those little small tweaks, just go through the finance, facilities, and academics committee. Now, the finance committee hasn't met yet, so they could take their 6 policies through there if it's at the will of the board.
Right, I do, but I also think this is an opportunity to redirect the board to paying attention to state statute, NCSBA, and not just move. I know we respond to the needs of community, but not just prioritizing policies that are in our hard work, right? Because these policies are the hard work. And so if we're doing the work that we were elected to do and intended to do, we would prioritize that. And so it's an opportunity to redirect the work. It might slow down all of the loving, wonderful policies that we're trying to put together. But as we have had so many discussions tonight, I think it's important that we do slow down the process so that we aren't developing policies that conflict with other policies. And I don't mean the NCSBA policies, because if we only adopted NCSBA policies, they've already vetted them for conflict with their own NCSBA policies. And so we have this way of doing things for Durham and taking care of Durham. And I think that we will still bring that lens to this work. But I think that we need to be more informed and more engaged around making sure that we're doing what's absolutely required and what we're creating is aligned with what's required. And that our policies, and that our policies are consistent with one another. And so I guess, am I asking administration to do work too soon that y'all aren't ready to do, which is why you need to go to committees in September instead of the August policy committee meeting? Because we won't be able to tier anything that's come from community until after August 31st. But we have to meet this month. And so what are we going to meet and discuss other than electing a chair if we aren't discussing policy?
So some of the work will need, I'm sorry.
Dr. Pittman, yes.
To do would be, we'll elect the chair, we need to establish your meeting schedule. And part of one of the recommendations is going to be to establish the process for tiering, so that when that August 31 date comes, then in our work in September, we'll be able to apply the process for tiering to the policy list that's been submitted. But it certainly wouldn't preclude addressing these policies from the summer. If I can't speak for the teams that have been assigned the clusters and their readiness.
Thank you, Dr. Pittman. I'm gonna go, Ms.
Oh, no, board member,
Malone.
for sure.
Ms. Burr. Oh, okay. Mr. Kason, and then Ms. Bankatave.
I just want to make sure I'm clear. There's no policy committee meeting scheduled for August at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Because the original idea was that it would meet after the 31st and we see what has come in from the public and.
Well, we needed the members appointed to determine the scheduling of the meeting.
Okay.
But Ms. Rogers is absolutely right. The meetings occur between August and May.
Mhm.
And there does need to be a meeting in August. I've got some possible options at the ready, but was waiting for the membership.
So with that being the case, does this give us an opportunity to quickly put together an August meeting that is publicly noticed in order to take care of these NCSBA policies? And my fellow board members, particularly those who are on that list. Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Kason. Dr. Pittman, do you have something you wanted to remark? Okay. Ms. Bankatave.
I just have a couple of questions for information. Dr. Pittman, are the policies from the NCSBA listed out here in the précis, all of the policies from the NCSBA that need to be passed
So
ASAP?
Thank you for that question. To clarify, this is the list from their summer updates.
Okay,
They've already alerted us that they will be issuing fall updates
okay,
in September or in September. So there are more coming, and there are some on here that are time urgent in some regards. The law has passed, it's in effect in July, and our policy needs to come forward. Now, we'll be in compliance with the law, but our policy is lagging.
okay. Thank you for that. And then my second question is, what are the parameters for how policies are referred out if this waiver is adopted? Some seem very obvious, like school nutrition service going to facilities, but for ones that are a little bit less obvious, how will that work?
So the superintendent will be the designee to assign, but our process internally right now is to assign policies to a cabinet member. And so the cabinet member then identifies who on their staff in their departments is the policy expert or would be this content area expert to work on the policy revision. Those staff members come to policy committee, talk the committee through the recommendations, and then the committee works through whatever modifications are needed. And then that track change or change version is presented to the board in two forms. The first is through the first reading, comes to the work session. Then the board discusses, provides further input. And then if it's necessary, goes back to committee, or again, if staff is able to manage those, and then it'll come back for second reading and adoption at the subsequent board meeting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Bankatave. Is there any other discussion? Oh, Attorney Malone.
The only thing I was gonna say is that if we move the summer updates to the side for a second, one of the things that Dr. Pittman and Dr. Lewis and I all discussed is that the NCSBA cadence is just off for what you guys do, because what will actually happen is that they will send them out in September, right? So you will have already tiered, you will have already done all that work. So those policies don't even get into the tiering until January.
But tiering isn't required. And if this committee or this board says, when they send their updates, we're prioritizing NCSBA updates this year. NCSB updates get put on the policy committee for consideration as soon as we get them. And then we'll get back to the stuff that we've noticed, the other items. Now, this is just my proposal. The committee has not agreed to this. But and then we get back to the other items, then we have more time between those cadences because we're not in charge of the cadence from NCSBA.
And what I observed last year was that the policy committee was really dealing with important policies that were important to the board and the membership. And these policies are like nuisance policies.
Yes. And
Right.
we can do that.
Right.
And
Right. So
we can
were-
do both.
Yeah, we were trying to free up the committee time to deal with the ones that the board really cares about and to pawn these off on the other committees since they're nuisance kind of policies. And then they obviously would come to a work session, and if at the board work session, the board wanted to punt it to the policy committee, they could, right? But that was the idea, was to try to get them out of the way so the policy committee could really work on those policies that the community and that board members really care about, because you ran out of time last year.
Yes,
you
I
know?
understand that. I hear that. And I feel some trauma response. I've lived through some trauma on this board, and that's what this feels like. I hear you. I get it. I do think in general, we were elected not to create a policy committee to solicit policy feedback, or we were to solicit feedback from community, but not to build policy around community. And I think that the execution could be different this year. Give us an opportunity to determine if that execution would be different this year. I think that the really important heart policies that our board worked on last year still remain important and will continue to be important to this board. But I think we are all more aware and conscientious that when we create policy, that's based on a response to community, we need to spend a little more time engaging with it in a way and making sure that it doesn't conflict with other policies. And so being attentive to the way NCSBA and learning that cadence of the way NCSBA does that could help us really make changes to our policy committee policy that could be beneficial for our heart policies too.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I want to clarify, your policy does require you to tier policies.
Prioritize.
Prioritize.
Yes,
Prioritize.
okay.
Yes.
Just want to make that clear. I thought
Yes.
that was mentioned. It wasn't.
Not
Okay.
tiered, but prioritize. So
6-7.
maybe, I think when we think about the tiering of the policies, we specifically name this policy, this policy, this policy. When we prioritize, we could say NCSBA or the state legislature is requiring us to implement this policy. So we have to put this at the top of our priority list. And every time we get this update, we are going to work on that cadence. And then everything else that we have listed as part of our priority would come after that. And if they send out a special one in October or something happens in the long session and we have to implement something before January, then the policy committee could take that up before re-tiering in January. Does that make sense?
Ms. Harold Goff and then Ms. Burr. Oh, does that make sense? We're waiting for a response. Who does it make sense to? Oh, the board?
He's made it clear he don't want us to do this, and I'm asking y'all, I don't.
So, what I appreciate about, well, what I'm hearing from administration is that these policies are coming and that this is something that we're already behind on several NCSBA policy updates that we need to take care of, and that this is a way to get our summer one so that we don't create an even bigger gap between, all the things that we need to catch up on. So I'm always in favor of giving space to the work. I also think, I really appreciate having a policy committee and being able to prioritize policies that, we're required to address, and also policies that become important to our work based on all things that happen in community and in the work of the board and administration. So space is what it feels like to me that policy committee needs in order for us to be impactful and to really be effective with our policies. So I would be in favor of, even if we don't make the permanent decision now, to change the cadence and allow policy committee to have some say-so in what that cadence is, and to bring that back to offer to the board a new cadence, or maybe even some updates to the policy committee. But in the interim of these summer policies, I would like to go ahead and to make a motion for us to entertain. I would like to move to waive policy 2231 and authorize the superintendent to refer the NCSBA 2026 summer policy updates to the appropriate board committees. That way, so I heard the motion. That way, it just makes some more space for the work that still needs to be done, because it's not gonna, this would be a thing for just now to keep that, to build some space with policy committee, and then to also give policy committee the opportunity at their next meeting to talk about how they want to prioritize the rest of the NCSBA policies that'll be coming in the fall and moving forward. So I've put that motion on the floor. Let me know if I need to repeat it.
Is there a second? If there's no second, the motion fails. Okay, so is there, someone help me out?
Sure. I move to waive policy 2231 and direct the policy committee to take up the policies at their August policy committee meeting.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Ms. Rogers, a second by Mr. Kaysen. Is there any discussion? Mr. Kaysen?
When the idea of the waiver came up originally, there was no August meeting of the policy committee. If we move these down to the other committees, then those discussions and those won't happen until September. So for me, if the original idea is to get these policies in place ASAP, because July 1 is gone, this seems like a great way to do it. I just didn't know that there was an option for the policy committee to actually meet in August. But if that is actually possible, it makes sense to me that we are actually achieving all the goals that were brought to us by doing that. So that's how I see it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaysen. Ms. Bent-Katif?
I'm sorry. I'm still like trying to wrap my head around this. And so, Ms. Rogers, it is your primary concern with policies going to the other committees that are not policy committees, like academics, facilities, possible conflict between policies being passed? Or I'm just trying to, because to me, it looks like trying to divide the work evenly. And so I'm trying to understand but I also completely agree with Mr. Kaysen that if y'all can meet and just knock these out in August, let's do that. So yeah, I'm trying to understand.
No, I don't have a concern about that. Share the wealth. Everybody do something, do the thing, send it to those things. It would have previously gone to, may have previously gone to separate agenda reviews. But we created a policy committee And I think sometimes as a board, we get caught up with squeaky wheel and forget to do what we are required to do. And so I don't want us to intentionally create a space where we are only responsive to squeaky wheel and not able to do the things that administration's asking of us, NCSBA is asking of us, and the General Assembly is requiring of us. And so we can, I think this is just one example of the way our work needs to be recentered on, we want the budget to be recentered on must-haves. We want administration to spend their time in places where things must be done. We also need to spend our time on the things that must be done. And we can add extra if we have to add extra, or delegate the work if we need to delegate the work and can't get it done. At the August Policy Committee, we can still send it back to the other committees to get it to the board.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Ms. Harokoff.
Thank you for saying that. I was going to agree that if it goes to policy committee and they need to punt it to the other committees because of the weight, because it seems like there will be a lot of these NCSBA policies coming. And I also just want to bring up that I don't want to, yes, we need to make sure that we are doing the work that we were elected to do and, you know, handle the things that we were elected to handle. And also, I want us to not, how do I say this? I want community to to also feel like that they have an avenue for being able to bring things to us that are important. We can do both and. I like this motion. I like it going to these summer policies, which was the concern from administration, being handled and not creating a larger runway of things that we have to catch up on. I like the idea of policy committee thinking about the cadence of how those will come in and how that will impact the tiering or the prioritizing of the policies that are addressed by the board. And I also want to say that we share the weight in our committees of all of us share the weight of these policies. So we have a policy committee and those policies will directly relate to the work that we're doing in committee as well. So we should be prepared in those moments to be able to make sure that policy committee has a reasonable workload. And that, I think that that's important because we all have to be mindful of our capacities, not just as a board, but also the capacities of our administration. So I lied. So it's already been moved and seconded, and I'm in agreement with that.
Thank you, Ms. Harokoff. Ms. Burr.
I was confused about why the motion talked about waiving the policy to send this to policy committee.
Because the policy says we're not supposed to tier until after August 31st. And we're going to go ahead and address these policies at that meeting.
And then I had another question or just comment that the three of us who are sitting on policy committee also sit on other committees. So I think it gives us some expertise to say, like with confidence, let's send these over to the other committees if we can't get to them on time.
Thank you, Ms. Burr. At this time, so we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. At this time, I'm going to call the question. Oh, just kidding.
Before you call the question, just a reminder that we are also, speaking of capacity, we're also trying to open school for thousands of kids in about 6 days too, so.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for that wonderful reminder. At this time, I'm going to call the question. No, I will not. Ms. Rogers.
It needs a second. So just call a vote.
I'm going to call a vote. Thank you. Yes, I'm going to call a vote. So, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. So, Dr. Lewis, do you have any follow-up items or anything that you want to share or anything that you guys, administration is going to be looking into or bringing back?
No, Dr. Pittman has the.
Dr. Pittman has them. Just kidding.
Well, no, we'll work together on this. So prior to the August 27th board meeting, in the superintendent's update, there was a request to include the list of schools that are scheduled for solar panels. There was a request that another doodle poll be sent to schedule the board retreat so that all members of the board might be able to attend. And regarding the community feedback on policy, to send an announcement that the policy portal is open and receptive to fresh ideas and new input.
Thank you, Dr. Pittman. At this time, it is, we need a motion for closed session.
I move we go into closed session for the reasons stated on the agenda.
Second.
So it has been, the motion has been moved by Ms. Harold Goff and second by Ms. Rogers. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 It passes unanimously. Let's go to closed session. We will not be coming back to live stream after closed session. So thank you and have a great evening.